Good morning. I'm Emilia Tarłowska. I'm Public Affairs and Communications Director at Plastics Recyclers Europe, and I would like to very warmly welcome you here today at this very special edition, the 10th edition of Plastics Recycling Show Europe. This show has become This show has become really the flagship event of our industry, and it's bringing together the entire plastic value chain today. PRSE is really the testament of a remarkable progress made in Europe in the plastic recycling industry, with some major technological developments, a significant growth in recycling capacities, in recycling rates, and a reinforced role of plastic recycling within the circular economy. But today, we are definitely at a turning point. We are seeing market pressure, we are seeing a declining demand for European-made recyclates and facilities closure across Europe. And with this there is a real risk that the capacity and investments will move outside the EU. This is more than a recycling issue. Plastics are essential to Europe's economy, to its fabric, to its industrial fabric. And plastic waste shall be our new geopolitical asset. To do so, we need to keep it in the loop. Not landfill, not incinerate it, not export it, but recycle it here in Europe. This session will shed light on the current policy landscape in Europe and explore how to rebuild, strengthen the resilience of plastic recycling industry in Europe. With that now, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Jessica Roswell, European Commissioner for Environment, Water Resilience and a Competitive Circular Economy. Commissioner Roswell has been closely engaged in advancing circular economy and plastic recycling within Europe's industrial agenda. The recent winter package, developed under her leadership, reflects this approach, bringing forward targeted measures to respond to the current challenges that plastic recycling in Europe is facing. Commissioner, we are delighted to have you with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Emilia. Good morning, everyone. God morgon, som vi säger på svenska. Some Swedish people here, I already met you. Dear Tom, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really happy and thank you for inviting me here today to be with you, as we already applaud, to celebrate with you the 10th edition of the Plastic Recycling Show Europe. I think it's applaud again, right? Congratulations. Plastic plays a major role in our economy, in healthcare, transport, electronics, construction, packaging, and many other key sectors. From the smallest, simplest use to applications that protect our health and safety and everything in between. Plastic is at the very heart of our world. But plastics are also associated to littering, pollution, and a strong dependency of fossil feedstock. And we are witnessing, as Emilia already said, every day that our dependency makes us vulnerable. Today, the plastic value chain is at a turning point. It must transition to a more circular and more resilience. Today, around 15% of our plastic are reintroduced into new products. Most of the rest is incinerated. Some are landfilled. Some is left to litter our landscape and our waterways. And that means that value is lost. Valuable materials are discarded instead of being recycled and reused. This weakens the second sector. It limits our environmental progress and also restricts our strategic autonomy. So the question is clear. What are the challenges then? Where are the obstacles? And how can we overcome them together to make European plastic more resilient and more circular? Insufficient waste collection is certainly a problem. So are high energy costs, I know that. But plastic recyclers are also, I know that, also dealing with an uneven playing field. Fragmented markets for recycled materials, unstable virgin materials prices, and unfair competition from producers outside the EU, all of these taking a toll. And together they are leading to reduced capacity and financial losses for EU recyclers. The Commission has been in continuous and close contact with recyclers throughout these challenges. I personally have met many of you out here today on a regular basis to ensure that we do understand these issues fully, and we are listening carefully, and we are taking concrete actions. Legislative measures like Single-Use Plastic Directive and the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation are helping to strengthen the demand. They support a business case for circularity in the plastic sector. More recycled plastic contents targets will come for vehicles under the end-of-life vehicle regulation. At the same time, and the same thing is true for textiles in the context of the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation. But today I would like to concentrate on the package of measures announced last December, as Emilia called the winter package, or the first package on circularity, that actually focused on the plastic sector. The package includes concrete short-term actions to support your work while also encouraging investments and innovation more broadly. And I want to again thank you all for your engagement and your input to this first package. Allow me to outline some of the key objectives. First, closer collaboration. The relaunch of the Circular Plastic Alliance that creates a high-level forum for cooperation, supporting transparency and joint commitments across the value chain. It will bring together industry stakeholders, member states, and the Commission to identify shared priorities and address key challenges. And this is crucial because the challenges that you are facing, I know, is complex. This will require a joined-up response, and I'm really pleased that many of you are actively involved in the alliance. Second, overcoming market fragmentation. The Commission has published a draft implementing act to lay down EU-wide end-of-waste criteria for mechanical recycled plastic waste. This will improve trust among recyclers and produce the quality of recycled plastic. It will facilitate the movement of plastic waste as a product, and it will reduce administrative burden for both economic operators and member states. Let me just give you an example that I know all of you already know, but a used plastic bottle is collected, shredded, cleaned, and turned into plastic pallets. I see some of these outside here in the fair, and ready to use again and become a new bottle. With clear EU-wide end-of-waste criteria, those pellets would no longer face legal uncertainty whether they are still a waste. Instead, they would be a clear EU framework showing that they are safe, high quality, and ready to be placed back onto the market now, no matter in which member states they are in. That is a real single market for circular materials, that how a real single market should look like. The final act is to expect to be adopted before the summer, following a positive vote from the member states. Another thing the Commission is preparing is to adopt an implementing act of recycled content on the PET single-use plastic beverage bottles. And these rules will create new opportunities for chemical recyclers that will also improve legal certainty. And they will help to unlock investments and scale up recycle capacity in Europe. The third thing is ensuring fair competition. Too often you are forced to operate in an uneven playing field. European recyclers cannot be asked to invest, innovate and comply with high standards while facing unfair competition from imports that do not play by the same rules. To support the enforcement of EU rules on imported plastic, the Commission is creating separate custom codes for virgin and recycled plastic, and your support in distinguishing between these two streams are crucial. And we, of course, welcome the PRE's work on a proposed methodology to differentiate virgin from recycled polymers other than PET. We have also announced monitoring efforts for EU and the global markets for virgin and recycled plastics. These will inform potential measures to ensure fair competition, and the Commission will take stock on this during 2026. Fourth, and the last one is encouraging a long-term investments and innovation. The Commission will step up and for support for circular projects, including through collaboration with national promotional banks and the European Investment Bank. We will also support trans-regional circularity hubs to encourage cross-border cooperation and to help scale up circular solutions. And a competitiveness coordination tool pilot will be set up to support availability of secondary raw materials within the EU. And this is about supporting strategic downstream industries, reducing the dependencies of third countries and strengthening Europe's autonomy. And we are also supporting research and innovation to advance plastic circularity. And the Commission will also launch a study to better identify investment gaps and opportunities. I say all these things, not to say all the good things I'm doing, but I want to share that we are doing things also and we are doing that because we have listened, but we will of course continue to listen because I understand that this will not solve all the problems that you are facing. I know this, and that's also why we are working hard on the Circular Economy Act that we will present later this year in the autumn. I also want to take the opportunity to say the journey will not be easy. So I will continue counting on your support into making this real single market for waste or single market. Ladies and gentlemen, as I think you understand now, I know you know this, there is no circular economy without plastic recycling. And there is no competitive circular economy without a strong European recycling industry. Your sector is essential for reducing pollution, cutting waste, lowering dependencies, and keeping valuable materials in our economy. And that's why we are determined to support you. We are determined to help your sector to grow, to evolve, and to innovate, and to provide you more legal certainty, and to ensure that you do not have to deal with unfair competition or an unfair level playing field. And your input, as I said, is very vital. So I really encourage you to continue engaging with us, including on the design and the implementing act on the Circular Economy Act. I will repeat myself now, continue to listen. We will continue to act. And I'm really confident that together we can build a stronger, more resilient and more competitive plastic recycling sector in Europe. And I really wish you an excellent event on this 10th anniversary. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. You've mentioned a very important challenge that we are facing today. It's the lack of a level playing field when it comes to the imported recyclates. Leveling this playing fields will help us to secure investments and to grow the recycling business. This is definitely one of the key challenges that we need to address if we want to continue with progressing in recycling capacities and recycling rates. And with that, I would like to move to Ton Emmans, President of Plastics Recyclers Europe, who will share with us his views from the field and how he sees those challenges and how he sees how we can actually turn them into opportunities for the industry. So Ton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you, Commissioner Boswell. It is great to have you here. So, I think it is clear that the pressure on us is increasing, and it's recognized. But the question is, what are we doing with this kind of recognition? Ten years ago, the plastic recycling show was not exist. 10 years ago, we started with it. And what brings it together today? Hundreds of companies linked to plastic recycling. And I would say more than 10,000 of jobs across Europe. Why it happened, why it grows so fast, why it had happened to grow so fast? Of course, the political direction was right. And it is still right. The Commission has built and created the framework. But you all together, we have built this industry in what it is today. My thanks for that. But today I want to be direct. Then I think after all these kind of years, I have learned a big deal. Then we know how this system works in practice. Yes, the pathway is there, the framework is there, but the market is not there. And I want to talk about the gap between the politic ambitions and the really market situation. Last year, and I want to start with this kind of picture. Last year, I visited a recycling facility. Some lines was already shut down, and this facility was operated since 1979. It survived all crises. It survived recessions. It survived decades of changing regulations. But what did not survive was the current market design. One of the operators came to me, and that stayed by me. He said, "Tom, the lines, they do their job, but the market does not." And that is what you can say. Recycling technology works. Recyclers can make in recyclates, and they are capable of high quality. They can do it. So, what is then wrong? Simple. The economic systems around the recyclers, they not consistently reward the recycling. As you know, and I think that everybody is aware about it, when we look to Europe, then we see a part of Europe that we lose a lot of capacity. And some of this, say, data information indicate that we lose 1 million of tons between 2023 and 2025. 1 million tons of plastic recycling capacity. So, factories slow down, investments postpone, and some of the, say, projects are cancelled. And then I ask the simple question often, why we in Europe increase targets when the whole sector is under pressure and shrinking? So the question is then, how we measure recycling. And I need to say that according to Eurostat, and the most of you maybe know that Eurostat said that the plastic packaging waste that is recycled in 2023 was 42%. But what is this really for a number? And historically, you could say, people say simple, what we enter to the system that we count. We as a recycler make it very easy. For us, count only the recyclates that left the company. So, and what is the difference between the 2 points? It's simple. The process rejects, the sorting rejects, and the contamination. And sometimes I say to the policy makers, I wish that our recycling facilities would so good or so efficient as your statistics. Then there's a totally difference between recycling statistics and industrial recycling. They go not hand in hand. But what is important is not the number. Important is what is the output and what left the recycling industry or the recycler and can substitute virgin. So let's talk a little bit about ourselves. We as recyclers sitting in a market on both sides that we not have under control. We buy waste, and there's a market price for the bills, and then we're selling recyclates, and there is a buyer, and the first what you do is check and make a comparison to virgin. So we as recyclers have not in control of our input, or we have a control over our output, either. So that is the reason that we say we plastic recyclers are setting a price taker between both fronts. We are not the ones who really decide. So we buy at market price, we're selling at market price. And between that, we are the recyclers who take the industrial risk of maintenance, people, energy, disposal costs. That is what we do. So, the question is simple. The answer lies with the virgin polymers. The virgin polymers, that is one where we as recyclers, our recyclates might go in competition. And if you look to that, then the polymers are produced global, and there are global forces. There's an overcapacity. Everybody knows that. Then they have a low-cost feedstock, and they have a global competition. And all these forces push the virgin price downward. And if the virgin price fell, we plastic recyclers cannot move with the price of recyclates freely. Beside of that, the virgin industry, the virgin price, set the ceiling for our recyclates. And that what I say is a simple observation. Then when we talk about virgin, we talk about global competition, global price, somewhere. And then we talk about the local recyclers. And I think if you look at this kind of structural observation, then you say, but what do we see at this moment in the market today? How is the behavior of the market? One thing is very clear. Some conditions have shifted in the last months and make recyclates competitive. This is what we saw. The question is, how long will we stay this situation? But one thing is important. The buyer return and the demand increase. So what tells us that as a very important information? I did nothing. It tells us one or two things. First, the mechanism works when you shift, or change the conditions. That is one. But another one, and that's a question. Recycling works when people buy. So the next question is then, what can we do to keep these conditions so that we get a stable and predictable market? Then what we not can accept is simple as temporary effects. This is what we don't like. And you need to know, we recyclers, we have a very complex process. We need to collect, we need to sort, we need to wash, we need to melt, filtration. And then you see this petrochemical industry, much easier to take gas or oil and to make a product out of it. The same virgin material. So I think that by myself, it takes the nature more of a million years to create fossil resources. And we recyclers, we try to go in competition with them on, say, products using as bottles packaging yesterday. That will not work. So our process is more complexer than them. So talk about fairness. But if you talk about it, then you think about the evolving of the politics. In 1994 it was, they say, try to recycling. In 2008, they introduced the directives. In 2018, they say, we increase the recycling targets. Then in 23, we're discussing and we talk a pool market. And then we saw in 2026, that is now, we will enforce the packaging waste regulation. And the good thing is, by 2030, there's this obligation of use of recycled material, recycled content. But be aware, a rule only will not change or give you the guarantee that the system works. So that brings me to the next point. Who have to finance this? And you need to know the extended responsibility, the extended producer responsibility was designed to finance the whole end of life of packaging. And what do we see? They take care, then we talk about it, then we talk about collection, sorting, and recycling. But they stop to pay too early. And what we see at this moment, they pay for the collection, they pay for the sorting, but some pay only partly for recycling. So the question is then recycling is not a sorting activity. When you look to recycling, there's a really industrial process. So you need to think about what it costs. Yeah? And the EPR system, they not pay enough. So, but be aware, everything will change. Then you need to see what will come. Under the packaging and packaging waste regulation, there's a simple accept or agree that all the material that enter have to complete the recycling process. That will be count towards recycling performance. So when we talk about the packaging waste regulation, this is the one who give really a direction to the market. And that introduce this binding requirement for recycling content and plastic packaging. So I mentioned clear direction, clear target. So the question is, how will it work? And how can we make that it will work? And there's three things. Number one is simple timing. Number two is verification. And number three is enforcement. All the three need to be introduced and need to be there at the same time. Then you need to know, when we talk about timing, you have to invest when you do recycling in advance. It costs you normally 3 to 5 years to build a facility and to commission it and to run it. Beside of that, some of the rules, they need to be more decaded and they will become more clear over the years. So when we talk then about market, then we talk about trust. And when will become trust in the market? When there is a credible verification and an effective enforcement. So when we take simple and say the targets will only work when we have an enforcement consistency, say across Europe. And otherwise, there will be some only attention and nothing else. And it will be not so, or otherwise that we will say there will be never reliable numbers. So you can look to PET, and people talk about PET and say to me, Tom, that is the best and the most successful when we talk about recycling. And I say yes. When we look to PET, then PET to bottled water is very successful. Not only for the material, but it's successful for the system. Where you look to the system, you have a high collection rate, and clean stuff through the postal system. You have high demand through recycling content. You have, say, approval for food contact. And besides that, scale, industrial scale. And if that come together, then you see that the progress can be very far and good. And that is what has happened in the PET industry. Then you can go to films. And then say flexible films. Yes, they are technically recyclable. But visible, say, technical feasibility, mean not automatic, economical viability. Low value output, low margin, and very complicated. And that tells me that not each system fit for all the material. So there's not one system fit for all material. Besides that, you need to know that flexibles is, I would say, still the remain gap when we talk about the circular plastic economy on material. And there you will see, if this happens, there's all the time something that's put in place and said, we have a new technology and we have the solution. So, and then we talk about chemical recycling. And chemical recycling can play a role in the future when we talk about plastic systems. But, and sure, especially when we talk about difficult to recycle material, mechanical, then it can be. But I need to say this, and that is for any plastic, say, pathway to scale. You have 3 questions. The first question is economics. When will you make money with it? What will become the oil price? carbon price, and how much contribution do you need to be competitive. Number 2 is an easy one. It's the politic. Can I trust the framework? Beside of that, can I define recycling content? And how I verified it when it is physical not possible to measure it in a new polymer. So then you can talk about global consistency. We know that I mentioned before that polymer is produced worldwide. So, and now somebody outside of Europe claimed recycling content. How sure we are that they use the same standards of transparency and verification. So, and that is not what I would say technical questions. That are simple design questions, and they apply to all recycling, not only chemical, but mechanical too. And of course, when we talk about upscale and all this kind of stuff, then you see that something changed. So you need to know, many years Europe has exported a part of our plastic waste to countries where the processing was cheaper. This area will become to an end. Of the 21st of November, Europe will stop export to non-OECD countries. So we keep it here. So we need to find a way so the material will stay here, and we have to look what we do with it. But you need to know, when we say that plastic waste is a resource, then we have to treat it as a resource. To keep it here is not a strategy. That is only the start and the challenge. So, how can we absorb this material in Europe? So now, I would say that's not an issue. We know where we want to like to be by 2030. So far, we can take it. But you need to know our machines is not running on orders. Sorry, not on policy, but they're running on orders. So the question is, and that is what we need to discuss, where would we like, and that's unavoidable, where we would like to create value. So, and I make it easy. The plastic waste is European, the policy is European, so I think it is no longer necessary to discuss where we need to be the value. And you need to know, you think now, what is happening here? In my opinion, it has nothing to do with origin, where this material is coming from. But it has simply to do with the verification. That we know it is very difficult to verify recycling content in a product. And that is what you need to do and to know, and that gives the effects of the value that you create. So, and so long that is the case, we European plastic recyclers not competing with other recyclers in this world. We are competing with the claims which are not verified, which you not can verify. That is an issue. And if you cannot verify that, you have an issue that you will see not the value. And if you have not the value, there will become no investments. And if there's no investments, there will become no new capacity development. So, first on the reality. When you look to us, we did it not very well. Our market was under pressure. Yeah, we had an underuse of our lines. This is what I can tell you. And it was not simple that you say, oh, it was on margin. No, it was really in the core business. And there was really a gap that we already saw. And if you talk about what is in the structure, I could say the structure is an easy one. It is not a cycle, it is structural. And that is how we do the business. We can see it. That is how we do the business. And the business is simple, logical. If there's no demand, there's no investments. If there's no investments, there's no new capacity. And think about it. You can wait. You can wait altogether till 2030, that the demand will be created. But if we wait till 2030, then it could be that we will achieve our targets on paper without the capacity that they need to deliver it. So, what is needed? With all respect, we don't need more ambitions. What we need is simple alignments. Alignments between the policy makers, the investments, and the markets. Beside of that, the economics, the demand, and where we want to create the value. And I make it very easy again. The waste was local. The politics was local. So the value needs to be there where the recycling takes place. So what I ask is that I believe when we do the right things, then we could build a competitive, strong recycling industry in Europe with our own strengths. The only question is how we make it happen. And for that, I would like to say this. The foundation is in place. Recycling works. And we are ready. I'm sure about that. We are ready. But already is not good enough. Then what you need is simply a system that works. And the system will not develop by himself. In the system, need to create right conditions. And the conditions are not aligned at this moment. What we see is simple. We see that we not make money, we not produce enough, and we still see that as a gap. So that's not a limitation. That is a choice that we will make and have to make. The choice, would we like to go from a target to a market that works? There's a choice. Another choice is simple, that we have to create a demand that really achieve the recyclers. And beside of that, we make a choice to build a recycling industry that can be competitive. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I started in the beginning, the question is not if recycling works. We know it does. The real question is, are we ready to make the system work? Thank you for listening.